There's something deeply unsettling about seeing your idols grow weak. In our minds, stars are immortal. They glow forever in movies, on stage, and in our memories. But real life doesn't work like Hollywood. Behind the scenes, many of the most celebrated names in the industry are quietly suffering from illnesses so severe, it's a miracle they're still alive. From iconic actors to legendary musicians, they've graced our screens and soundtracks for decades. But now some are fighting for breath, battling cancer, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and rare diseases most of us have never heard of. The glitz and glamour can't shield them from pain. Yet what makes these stories so powerful is not just the sickness, but the strength. You'll see how each one, in their own way, has turned suffering into purpose, fame into advocacy, and loss into legacy. Let's start with a name that once lit up the screen with every appearance. Tim Curry, a quiet star in the twilight of art. Once a shining symbol of stage and screen, Tim Curry is an indispensable name in the memories of many generations of cinema lovers. From the brilliant and rebellious image of Frankenfurter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, to the haunting Pennywise in the original version of It, Curry not only plays a role, he lives with each character, breathing life into them with an outstanding talent and irresistible charm. However, behind that halo is a cruel reality. In 2012, a serious stroke almost took his life. Although he escaped death, Tim Curry was forced to live in a wheelchair, his health significantly declining. For many people, that could be the end of a brilliant career. But for Curry, it was just a turning point, not the end. Refusing to be defeated, he turned to the field of voice acting, where his distinctive, rich and charming voice continues to captivate millions of people. From cartoons, video games, to audiobooks, Tim Curry is still present, not through images, but through sound, like an artistic soul that persistently resonates despite his exhausted body. Nowadays, in his twilight years, he rarely appears in public. Every time he appears, he needs someone to support him. His eyes contain fatigue, but also a glimmer of peace. Although he has never officially revealed that he has a serious illness, many sources close to him say that he is living in silence, taking time to rest and heal. For fans, it is difficult to accept that the image of the once brilliant Tim Curry is now just a silent shadow in the middle of life. But his story has never been just about decline. It is an epic about will, determination, and an undying passion for art. Though his body may be weak, Tim Curry's spirit has never been defeated. He has lived every moment to the fullest, not for the acclaim, but to continue creating miracles. Tim Curry may be closing his life in peace, but what he left behind, the classic characters, the fiery performances, the haunting sounds will live on forever. In the hearts of his fans, Tim Curry is never a loser. He is a living testament to the saying, art is immortal. Neil Diamond, Melody in the Dark Neil. Diamond once sang, "Good times never seem so good," and indeed, for more than half a century, his music has been a vibrant echo of the beautiful days and the long, lonely nights. With his warm, powerful, and emotional voice, he is not just a singer, he is an irreplaceable icon in the history of American and world popular music. From Sweet Caroline, the immortal love song that resonates at every sports stadium, wedding, or party, to I Am, I Said, a sincere confession of loneliness, Neil Diamond does not just write music, he tells stories. He makes music like a spiritual traveler, collecting sadness, joy, loss, then turning it all into melodies that millions of people hum together. But in 2018, a tragic chapter opened when Neil Diamond announced that he had Parkinson's disease, a chronic neurological disease that gradually causes the body to lose control, flexibility, and eventually the voice. At that time, he was still at the top. His world tour was still selling out. The audience was still singing his name. And then, in the middle of everything, he chose to withdraw from the stage. A deep silence fell suddenly, like the last note on a guitar that had not yet died down. For millions of fans, it was not just the farewell of an artist, but the end of a musical era. But Neil Diamond did not disappear. Although he was no longer in the bright lights, he still lived on with music, quietly but resiliently. He continues to compose, support young artists, and most of all, he still lets music flow in every breath, every cell, as he once said in an emotional interview in 2023. Music is still here, inside me. It never left. That same year, he made the world cry when he suddenly appeared at Fenway Park in Boston, singing Sweet Caroline with tens of thousands of spectators. Although his voice was no longer as strong as when he was young, each word still resonated, filled with experience, pain, and hope. It was no longer a performance, but a sacred moment where an artist's soul touched the hearts of thousands of people. Nowadays, Neil Diamond lives a quieter life, away from the spotlight. But he has never stopped fighting. The disease may have made his hands tremble. It may have made him unable to dance in front of crowds. But it could not extinguish the fire that burned in his heart, the fire called music. Neil Diamond is living proof that when everything else is fading, a true artist can still sing. From the heart, from memory, and from faith. In the darkness of his illness, he is still the melody, slower, quieter, but more beautiful than ever. Sam Neill, from dinosaur hunter to cancer warrior. Sam Neill, the archaeologist who turned into a cancer warrior. We've seen him walking through the jungle, holding a raptor claw, his eyes sharp but knowing. In Jurassic Park, Sam Neill was more than just Dr. Alan Grant. He was a symbol of knowledge, courage, and human bravery in the wild. When dinosaurs roared and everything went haywire, he was still a steadfast support for the audience. But in real life, Sam Neill faced an enemy that didn't come from the Cretaceous period, but from deep within his own body, a rare and aggressive blood cancer called angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma. The disease struck like a bolt from the blue. In 2022, what had seemed like a harmless sign at first, a little fatigue, a few swollen lymph nodes, suddenly turned into a life-or-death sentence. In the blink of an eye, Sam Neill was no longer a man preparing for his next role, but a patient sitting before a doctor, listening to the cold words, advanced cancer. But like the characters he had played, Sam did not give up. He entered a relentless battle with chemotherapy, immunotherapy, persistent pain, and quiet uncertainty. In what seemed like the darkest period, he chose not to give up, but to write. From his hospital bed, between IVs, he put his hands to the keyboard and began writing his memoir. Did I ever tell you this? Not a confession, not a lament, but a gentle, sometimes humorous, sometimes poignant account of a life well lived. In March 2023, Sam Neill brought relief to fans around the world when he announced he had entered remission. The disease was not gone, but it was temporarily withdrawn. He calls it a deferred opportunity, not a cure, but an extension of life. And he doesn't waste a minute of it. Sam Neill doesn't hide. Instead, he uses his own experience to speak powerfully about things that many people keep quiet. The emotional turmoil of facing death, the fear of losing one's identity when illness knocks on one's door, and the vital importance of early detection. He doesn't speak out to gain sympathy. He speaks out so that those in his own struggle don't feel alone. Today, at 77, Sam Neill continues to make films, grow grapes, and make wine in New Zealand, his second passion after acting. But most of all, he lives like a warrior, without pomp, without drama, but with the serenity of someone who has looked death in the face and smiled. If Sam Neill once made us believe that dinosaurs could come back to life, today he makes us believe that humans can overcome anything, even the most dire fate. Dust and diamond, flashing bright, then fading. For the 9X generation, the name Dust and Diamond is forever associated with the character Screech, a goofy, curly-haired, shrill-voiced but sincere and lovable nerd in Saved by the Bell. In the colorful world of a school sitcom, Screech is a familiar laugh, a symbol of optimism despite being clumsy, the soul of a nostalgic childhood in many teenage hearts. But when the stage lights went out, Dust and Diamond stepped off the set with an uncertain baggage. After Saved by the Bell ended, he could not escape the shadow of Screech. Hollywood, inherently cruel, does not open its arms to actors who have been boxed in. Big roles did not come. Opportunities just passed by. Dustin began to slide into the vortex of cheap reality TV shows, tabloid controversies, legal scandals, financial troubles. People no longer called him an actor, but a past star. And then the shock came like a fatal blow. In early 2021, when Dustin felt a sore throat and decided to go to the doctor, he could not have expected to hear the verdict: terminal small cell carcinoma. The terrible disease did not give him time to prepare. 3 weeks after the diagnosis, Dustin Diamond took his last breath at the age of 44. There was no farewell, no speeches or memorial tours, just a short news: Dustin was gone. That silence stunned the entire community. Fans had not even had time to catch their breath after the bad news before they had to say goodbye to him. A death too quick, too cruel, of someone who had brought laughter to millions. And at that moment, people began to look at Dustin with different eyes. No longer as a mockery of a fallen star. No longer are the harsh comments on social media, but the grief for a man who tried so hard to hold on to the light. Former colleagues express their condolences. Viewers revisit old episodes, this time not just to laugh, but to silently say thank you. Thank you for being a part of their youthful memories. Dustin Diamond's legacy is not perfect. It is a song with broken parts, off-key parts. But that is also why it is authentic. Behind the laughter is a wounded soul, but still tries to stand up and make fun of life. Dustin is a small star, bright, then quietly extinguished. But sometimes the quietest stars leave the deepest traces in the sky of memories. Kathy Bates, the woman who fights silently. Hollywood has seen many talented actresses, but few possess the depth and weight of Kathy Bates. On screen, she can make you gasp in horror, as in Misery, the role that won the Oscar in 1990. But it is also her in Fried Green Tomatoes, Titanic, or American Horror Story, who moves audiences with sincerity, warmth, and inner strength without words. Kathy Bates is not beautiful according to Hollywood's flashy standards. She doesn't need it, because her aura does not come from her appearance, but from her ability to make each line come alive, each character become an obsession or a comfort in the hearts of the audience. But behind the camera lights, Kathy has had to fight enemies more terrifying than any villain. In 2003, she quietly faced ovarian cancer. No press noise, no complaints, just surgery, chemotherapy, and back on set as if nothing had happened. Nearly a decade later, fate knocked again: breast cancer. This time, Kathy Bates decided to have both breasts removed. Not an easy decision, especially for a woman living in a world that values appearance. But she chose not to go public at the time. Not out of fear, but because she wanted to heal, in peace, without judgment. But the pain did not stop. After the surgery, Kathy lived with lymphedema, a chronic complication that causes swelling and pain, affecting daily activities. Many people hide this, but she did not. Kathy Bates chose to speak up, to share her experience publicly, to become a national ambassador for awareness of this disease, a disease that is misunderstood and often overlooked in public medicine. No big speech. There is no image of a heroine. She just works quietly, still appears in movies, still radiates strength through her resilient presence. Kathy's courage is not in the climax. It is in the fact that she continues to live, continues to create, continues to stand tall despite her many injuries. Kathy Bates reminds us that not all warriors wear armor. There are those who fight silently, every day, with a smile and a steadfast heart. People like her, they don't need the spotlight to shine, because they are the light for others in their darkest moments. Robin Williams, the man who brought light to the world, lost in his own darkness. Robin Williams was more than an actor. He was a phenomenon, someone who could walk into a silent room and, with a single joke, make everyone burst into laughter. He was the gentle but mischievous Mrs. Doubtfire, the Dead Poets Society teacher who inspired with every word, the therapist in Good Will Hunting who didn't say much but each word was a stab at the soul. Robin Williams could play every type of character, from the eccentric to the lonely father, from the goofy to the intellectual. But there was one role for which he never won an award, nor for which no one applauded: the role of himself in real life. Behind the spotlight was a quiet Robin who often struggled with depression, anxiety, and loneliness. His personal life was a maze of uncertain turns that few people truly understood. In 2014, when he took his own life, the whole world was shocked. The man who had made millions laugh until they cried could not save himself from his inner turmoil. Initially, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, a neurological disease that affects the ability to move. But things did not stop there. After Robin passed away, the doctors who examined him discovered a more terrifying truth. He had Lewy body dementia, LBD. This is one of the most dangerous and devastating types of dementia, not only affecting memory but also causing hallucinations, paranoia, extreme confusion, and a gradual loss of the patient's own identity. Not only did the body betray him, but the mind also gradually became a strange maze. Robin had to live with it in silence, not understanding what was happening to him. Every day that passed, he felt that his mind was no longer his own. In the final months of his life, the man who once radiated life began to feel trapped in his own shadow. And yet he kept trying, still in front of the camera, still trying to make people laugh, still doing what he did best, bringing light to others, even as he himself was slowly sinking into darkness. It was only after his death that the world truly understood. Robin was not just depressed. He had suffered a full-blown physical and mental breakdown caused by a disease that was almost impossible to diagnose accurately while he was alive. Robin Williams' story is more than just a personal tragedy. It is a wake-up call to the whole of society about mental health, about misunderstood illnesses, about the importance of listening and understanding the pain that is not visible outside. Robin is gone, but his laughter and the tormented silence behind it continues to resonate. He taught us that sometimes the people who make us laugh the most are the ones who need to be loved the most. Michael J. Fox, the real-life time traveler. For millions of people, Michael J. Fox will forever be Marty McFly, the guy who drove the DeLorean through time, representing the youth, humor, and hope of the 1980s. But Michael's life was more than just a successful science fiction movie. It was also a harsh reality journey, full of bravery and resilience. In 1991, when his career was at its peak and Michael was only 29 years old, he received a diagnosis that everyone dreads: Parkinson's, a chronic neurological disease that causes the body to gradually lose control, a sentence with no parole. For years, he hid his illness, continued to act, continued to smile brightly on screen, despite the tremors, fatigue, and anxiety that smoldered on the inside. Until 1998, Michael decided to go public with his illness, not just to share his pain, but to turn it into a source of community strength. 2 years later, he founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the world's largest nonprofit dedicated to Parkinson's research. To date, the organization has raised more than $2 billion, not only bringing hope to millions of patients, but also pushing the entire medical community closer to a cure. Michael J. Fox may no longer be active in the arts, but he has never stopped. Through public appearances, candid memoirs, moving speeches, and self-deprecating humor, he continues to be a beacon of light amid the dark journeys of millions of people. In a recent interview, Fox admitted, "I don't think I'll live to be 80. It wasn't a surrender, but a brave, honest admission. Because what is admirable is not the length of his life. It is how he lives each year, each day, each moment. For him, gratitude is the foundation of optimism. And from that gratitude, Michael J. Fox has built a living model of courage. No noise, no sadness, just steadfastness, even when his legs are no longer steady. Michael J. Fox is not just surviving a terrible disease, he is rewriting the definition of living. A life with purpose, with love, with laughter, and with a heart that never gives up. Christina Applegate, when laughter became a shield. Once the witty Kelly Bundy who made audiences laugh out loud on Married with Children, Christina Applegate is more than just a comedy icon. She's the soul of a television generation. But behind the glitz and the bright smiles lies a very different story, a silent but courageous battle. In 2021, Christina publicly announced that she has multiple sclerosis, MS, a chronic neurological disease that gradually takes away control of the body. She spoke of persistent fatigue, unsteady steps, and days when her spirit felt like it was collapsing. MS doesn't just take away her health, it challenges her identity as an artist who once lived by movement, emotion, and agility on stage. But instead of retreating, she chose to move forward. During the final season of Dead to Me, Applegate continued filming, even though each scene was a struggle, both physical and mental. Some days she had to use a cane, sometimes she had to sit down between takes. But every time the camera rolled, she returned to that bright light. Though her body was no longer the same, her heart had never changed. Christina didn't hide her reality. At events, she wore a shirt that read FUMS, a bold, sarcastic, spirited statement. I'm sick, but I'm not defeated. In the midst of her physical storms, she chose to keep her laughter, a special kind of antibiotic, a way to not forget who she was. Linda Ronstadt, When Music Turns Silent. There are voices that are not just sounds, but the soul of a generation. Linda Ronstadt was that, with her long, flowing hair, piercing eyes, and a voice that soared like the wind in the wilderness. She was the embodiment of 70s, 80s country rock. From Blue Bayou to You're No Good, she sang as if each word was written from her heart, leaving audiences breathless with the pure beauty of her emotions. However, fate is often cruel to beautiful things. In 2013, Ronstadt publicly announced that she had Parkinson's disease. The disease had quietly taken away the ability she cherished most, her voice. No more vibrations, no more control over her vocal range, no more waves of sound that had touched millions of souls. For anyone, it was a fall. But for Linda, it was a silent rebirth. She chose not to hide. Instead, she recounted her life in her memoir, Simple Dreams, and in the moving documentary, The Sound of My Voice, a look at an artist who lost her voice, but never her light. In a 2020 interview, when asked how she felt about not being able to sing, Linda simply smiled and said, I can't sing, but I can still hear the music. I can still feel the sound with all my heart. A simple statement, but one that resonates like a final ballad, quiet, powerful, and never-ending. Today, Linda Ronstadt lives surrounded by her family, surrounded by memories, old recordings, and warm laughter. Though the stage has receded, her influence continues to resonate in every note of American music, an icon who didn't need to sing to move the world. Billy Connolly, Laughing in the Face of Darkness. For decades, Billy Connolly, Scotland's irreverent bard of comedy, had audiences clutching their sides with laughter. With his unruly hair, booming voice, and razor-sharp wit, he transformed everyday absurdities into side-splitting, satirical gold. But in 2013, the punchline of life took a sharp turn. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. For many, such news might have marked the end of public life. But Connolly did what he had always done best. He met it with a laugh. He once quipped that Parkinson's made him dance without music, a wry line that barely concealed the creeping reality of a degenerative illness. Yet behind the joke was a defiant spirit. Instead of allowing the disease to steal his joy, Billy chose to channel it into new forms of creativity. Though he stepped away from the stage, his voice remained present through documentaries, autobiographical writings, and vibrant visual art. Billy Connolly didn't stop being an artist. He simply evolved. Humor became more than a craft. It became a shield, a rebellion, a way to keep the darkness at bay. In one interview, he admitted, "The sadness hits you sometimes, but it doesn't hit you for long." Because for him, laughter wasn't a distraction. It was survival. Today, Connolly lives quietly in Florida, his body slower, but his mind still sharp and mischievous. Fans may no longer see him live, but his legacy echoes in every joke that lifts a heavy heart. He reminds us that the people who bring us the most joy are often carrying invisible burdens and still choose to smile anyway. Billy Connolly doesn't just tell jokes, he lives them, with courage, defiance, and an undying love for life. Frankie Muniz, When the Shine Becomes a Faded Memory. Frankie Muniz was once the boy the world loved. In Malcolm in the Middle, he played a mischievous genius in a dysfunctional and lovable family. a role that made him one of the biggest child stars of the 2000s. By the time he was a teenager, Frankie was walking red carpets, appearing on magazine covers, and being seen in living rooms across America. But what many people don't know is that much of that glory is now just a blank in his mind. Frankie Muniz suffered multiple strokes and seizures, which left him with severe amnesia, to the point he can't remember much of his acting career, the episodes, the awards, the interviews, the moments. For any actor, that's a devastating loss. For someone who was once in the spotlight, it was like losing a part of his identity. But Frankie Muniz didn't lament. He didn't succumb to nostalgia. He reinvented himself in unexpected ways, becoming a professional racer, then playing drums in a band, then going into business, starting a family, and building a new life. Not at the center of Hollywood, but at the center of his own happiness. In the rare interviews he did, Frankie didn't try to recount. Instead, he exuded a calmness that was touching. "I may not remember everything," he said, "but I know I lived." It was a simple yet philosophical statement from someone who had gone through the spotlight, then into silence, with gratitude. Frankie Muniz's story is a gentle but profound reminder that the lives that shine the brightest are sometimes the most fragile. And sometimes strength doesn't come from holding on to the past. It comes from letting go, from living in the present. Frankie is no longer the teenage star he once was, but he remains an inspiration, not because of what he remembers, but because of how he chooses to live with what remains. Live with what remains. Live with what remains. Live with what remains. Sometimes the truth is darker than fiction, and what you've just seen is only the tip of the iceberg. Who do you think is still hiding shocking secrets? Drop their name in the comments, and they might be featured in our next video. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because even crazier twists are coming your way. See you soon, and remember, in showbiz, the drama never sleeps.